Let's make our peach and blueberry cobbler. So I have already preheat the oven, turned it on to 350 degrees, and I want to start first by making the filling. And everything is still frozen, so you have a couple of options. We can actually cut these peaches down if you would like a little smaller. I'm going to leave them that size, but I do need to go in, and you want to make sure that they are not one large lump. You would like them to stay as little slices. If you were going to make this fresh or with canned peaches, I would drain the canned peaches. And if you were going to use fresh, you're going to want to do that real quick blanching technique and get the skins removed. Gonna go ahead and add my 1 cup of blueberries. Make sure those are also separated. And then to this, I'm gonna start with that 1/4 cup of sugar and get that tossed in so that everything is nicely coated. And then I'm going to add that teaspoon of cornstarch, and this is going to help thicken those juices as it bakes, so it kind of creates a little syrup. So this is probably a little serving cobbler, maybe for 2. It's not a really large, so you could double it if you would like. All right, I'm going to go ahead and start. I happen to have a little smaller pan. I think this is probably about a 4 by 8. So you could also use a loaf pan if you wanted to. And what I'm going to do is just spread those peaches and blueberries around and get all of the sugar and everything that is out of that pan and mix it around and kind of make sure maybe the blueberries aren't just on one side. Make sure your fruit and everything looks nicely dispersed. Okay, I'm going to put that off to the side. And then we're going to move on to the topping. So this is more like a biscuit topping than a, like maybe more than a cake mix. Some cobblers like have oatmeal and butter and brown sugar. This is a little bit different. So we're going to start by adding the flour. You should have reserved 2 tablespoons of sugar, the baking powder, and a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And I'm just going to mix that together with my fork. And then I have my little 1/4 cup of butter. But before I do that, I'm going to also take my 1 egg and my 2 tablespoons of milk. And I'm going to use that. And I'm going to just whisk this together and have that off to the side. Okay, so into this mixture, I'm going to take that butter, and it is still cold, and I'm going to go ahead and start by slicing it into smaller pieces, and then either use a dinner fork, or if you have a pastry blender and you want to cut the fat into that mixture. Go ahead, use my pastry blender. Okay, I'll come right back when I'm done. I finished breaking up all the butter, cutting in the butter into the flour, and you can see you shake it, everything's really small, about pea size. So I'm going to create a little well just in the middle of my bowl. And you're going to add the egg and that cream, add it all right into the middle. And then I'm just going to go ahead and use my fork. You could use a wooden spoon. And we're going to create that dough. Now it's probably going to be sticky, and we're going to want to try to knead it as much as we can. So make sure you kind of mix it until a dough forms. And then we're going to create little tiny squares to go onto the top of our cobbler base, our fruit. Okay, so it's pretty well stuck together, but it's not in pieces yet. So I'm just going to go in, again, squeeze it together, go ahead and start to knead a little bit to push all of it together. And sometimes if it sits for just a little bit, that milk will finish hydrating the rest of that flour and get all absorbed. We're going to just make sure. Just go ahead. Bench scraper, or there we go. Don't want it to stick too much, but I can definitely feel. So I'm not adding any more flour because I don't want it to be dry. I want a nice dough. Okay. So I think I'm going to go get a piece of parchment and, let's see, maybe not. I want to be able to get it off. Yes, I'm going to clean this up, and I'm going to get something just to roll the dough out on. I don't think we need a rolling pin, but if you have... Okay, so I put my dough on a piece of parchment. I think it's going to make it easier. So if you have even wax paper, you can put it between two sheets. And I've decided I am going to go ahead and use my rolling pin. Now we're going to use all that dough. So you don't want to make it any bigger than your size of your pan. So mine went flat on one side. Okay, so that's it. And then I have my knife. So I'm going to cut it. I'm going to cut the edges off just a little bit to straighten it out, and I can always re-roll them and even do little drop pieces of the biscuits. So I'm going to square it off, and I think that's about the width. So I'm going to do them in about 2-inch squares. So like that would be a serving. Okay. And then just take your biscuit and then just lay it right on the top of the fruit. And I'm going to do that one right next to it. Just like creating these little tiles of dough. Okay. All right, I'm going to re-roll that and cut it, and I'll show you before I put it into the oven. So I finished using my dough. I did have a tiny little piece of dough left over. I felt like this was thick enough. They're probably about 1/4 inch. They're a little, maybe 3/16 thick. So it is a little bit of a thicker dough. This is now going to go into that 350 degree oven for 25 to 30 minutes or until The fruit is tender and that top layer is really nice and golden brown. So I'll show you what it looks like when we're out of the oven. Cobbler's out. I showed you a picture, but you can see it's really nice golden brown. It was bubbling. I could see the blueberries breaking down inside. It's cooled, so obviously I can touch it. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna hit it now all over the top with a little bit of powdered sugar. You can do some whipped cream. You can do some ice cream. So I'm gonna go ahead and just serve up. I'm gonna go in, and what's nice is because we made those biscuits as little individual squares, you can go in and probably maybe serve 2 per person. So this would probably feed 4. And go in with your spoon really down low and get out all that fruit that's in there. Dig out the peaches and the juices. Oh, yum. And it's taken on that really beautiful color from the blueberries. I'm just going to hit it one more time. Serve it up. Hope you guys enjoy.